Have you ever wondered how we can actually measure the exact chemical makeup of a solution without, completely messing it up? Like, how do we observe this microscopic, invisible world of ions without accidentally destroying the very environment we're trying to study? It's a huge question, right? And answering it takes us on a pretty wild journey from the visible, macroscopic world all the way down to the subatomic. Welcome to This Explainer. I'm Dr. Kim, and today we're going to dive into a complete cinematic lecture on potentiometry, covering the principles, the instrumentation, and the actual measurements. We'll be tracing how those classic, old-school lab setups have evolved into the ultra-modern, microscopic biosensing tools we use today. So, grab your mental lab coats, because we're going to make this complex science absolutely crystal clear. All right, here is our roadmap for today. First, the power of potentiometry. Then, anatomy of the cell. Third, the governing equations. After that, automating the endpoint. And finally, we'll wrap up with miniaturization and biosensing.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. The power of potentiometry.
So the textbook definition is that potentiometry is a set of analytical methods based on measuring the potential of electrochemical cells in the absence of appreciable currents. But let's pause there, because that last part, in the absence of appreciable currents, that is literally the most important phrase to remember here. See, this is an equilibrium measurement. We're essentially just eavesdropping on a chemical conversation. Since we aren't pumping any significant current into the system, we can observe the environment without interfering with it at all. It's like the ultimate passive surveillance of the chemical world.
All right, so how do we actually pull off this eavesdropping? Let's move to Section 2. Anatomy of the cell.
The foundation of all potentiometric measurements starts with a classic, simple beaker setup. Now, it might just look like a couple of probes hanging out in a liquid, but it is actually a highly precise, interconnected circuit specifically designed to measure electromotive force.
And the crazy part? This entire setup relies on just 4 pretty simple, surprisingly inexpensive components. First up, we've got the reference electrode, and that provides a rock-solid known baseline potential. Second is the indicator electrode, which is the one that directly responds to our specific target ion in the analyte. Third is the salt bridge, which connects the 2 halves of the cell to maintain electrical neutrality. And finally, number 4, a high-impedance digital meter to capture that incredibly tiny electrical potential. Working together, these 4 parts translate invisible chemical activity into a physical electrical signal we can actually read.
Now that we've got the hardware sorted out, we have to ask, how does this instrument actually calculate the concentration of those invisible ions? Let's get into Section 3, the governing equations. Before we actually crunch the numbers, chemists use a standardized shorthand to describe the exact physical setup we just talked about. And you always read this notation from left to right, which is exactly how the potential builds. Start at the reference electrode, move across the phase boundary of the salt bridge, slip into the analyte solution, and finally arrive at the indicator electrode. It's just a really elegant way to communicate an entire laboratory setup in one single line of text.
And naturally, that shorthand perfectly sets up our main governing equation for the total cell potential. The overall voltage you're reading on your digital meter, E cell, is really just the potential of the indicator electrode minus the reference electrode plus the junction potential, which we call EJ. But hey, here's a fun fact for you. For most standard electroanalytical methods, that junction potential is actually so tiny that we can completely ignore it. So in the real world, your measurement basically boils down to the simple difference between your indicator and your reference.
Now, if we zoom in super close on that indicator electrode, the underlying mechanics are literally mind-blowing. As this quote lays out so well, the selective extraction of target ions from the sample solution into the membrane phase by the ionophore creates a phase boundary potential. Just think about that for a second. We have these specialized molecules called ionophores, and they are physically plucking specific target ions right out of the solution and pulling them into a membrane. This tiny, incredibly selective chemical grab actually generates a physical boundary of electrical potential, and that potential? It's directly proportional to exactly how much of our target ion is swimming around in the sample. All of this phase boundary magic and total cell math ultimately leads us to one absolute powerhouse of a formula, the Nernst equation. This right here is the fundamental relationship that takes raw abstract electrical potential, which we're measuring in millivolts, and magically converts it into a precise, actionable chemical concentration. Honestly, without the Nernst equation, that digital meter of ours is just spitting out random numbers. But with it, we unlock the exact chemical makeup of our unseen world.
So, we've got the theory down and the math, but how does this actually play out in a fast-paced, real-world laboratory? How are we using this cell to track a dynamically changing chemical reaction? Let's jump into Section 4, Automating the Endpoint. Titration is where potentiometry really gets to show off. Imagine you've got a machine that's continuously dripping a reactant into our beaker. As the chemical reaction hits its absolute completion point, which we call stoichiometric equivalence, the activity of our target ion suddenly shifts. And because of the Nernst equation we just talked about, this sharp chemical change makes the electrode potential literally spike. Modern automated titrators are actually programmed to hunt for this exact electrical spike. The split second they see it, they know the reaction is perfectly finished and they automatically shut off the drip. It takes classical chemistry and turns it into hands-free, high-precision automation. Okay, so we've mastered the macroscopic beaker. But as we know, science never stops. For our final leap in this explainer, we're ditching the traditional lab setup and zooming way, way in. Section 5, Miniaturization and Biosensing.
Historically, analytical chemistry has been all about bulk properties. You dunk a probe into a beaker, and you get an average reading of billions of molecules. But today's researchers, like Dr. Nicole Walker at Purdue University, are pushing the absolute limits into single-entity studies. See, as we're learning more about populations of cells or molecules, we're realizing that averages actually hide all the most important differences. If we truly want to understand chemical heterogeneity, we desperately need tools that can isolate and measure just a single biological entity.
But to measure a single entity, you need incredibly tiny sensors. Dr. Walker's research focuses on creating miniaturized bipolar reference electrodes. And honestly, what I absolutely love about this is the wild contrast between this super high-tech application and the gritty, hands-on creation process. To make these microscopic biosensors, researchers are literally pulling borosilicate glass capillary tubes around incredibly thin platinum and silver wires, melting and shaping them by hand using a standard hardware store propane torch. Once they're formed, these microelectrodes go into stirred solutions to take open-circuit potentiometry measurements.
And guys, the most crucial point here is this number, 10 to the negative 15 amps. Remember earlier when we defined potentiometry as taking measurements in the absence of appreciable currents? Well, in these miniaturized biosensors, the bias current flowing through the system is on the order of 10 to the negative 15 amps. That is such an incomprehensibly tiny amount of electricity, it is basically zero. And because the current is so impossibly low, we can interrogate incredibly delicate biological systems, like single living cells, without frying them or altering their natural state whatsoever. So, from a simple glass beaker and a digital meter, all the way to hand-torched microcapillaries measuring single cells at near-zero current, potentiometry has truly evolved into a master key for unlocking the microuniverse, which leaves us with one incredibly thrilling question to ponder. If we can now monitor the exact chemical behavior of a single biological entity without disturbing it, what unseen worlds, what hidden cellular conversations will these miniaturized tools reveal next? I'm Dr. Chem, and I really hope this explainer sparked your curiosity to keep exploring the invisible world around us.